Happy Tuesday. We're on day 2 of the tomato marathon canning recipes. Y'all, that was a mouthful. But I got a late start. Sorry. I had to get laundry done. And it's still going, so you may hear the dryer. But before we get in to this recipe, you're going to need 1/4 of a pound of diced peppers. Bell peppers. Green, yellow, red, doesn't matter. Spicy peppers. I happen to be using jalapeños that I just went and picked early this morning from my garden. I'm guessing 4 of these to make 1/4 of a cup. Okay? So any pepper that you choose. The original recipe, and that's going to be, I believe this was put out in the 90s. I'm pulling this from my ball book, okay? Stewed tomatoes. Stewed tomatoes in this one. The only variation in all the books, and I verified this morning because I just tend to go to this one. I can remember it by the cobbler. So some of you may actually have this old book. The only variation is some add salt, some don't add salt. And I think what has happened over time is they've allowed the individual, the consumer, to choose to add the salt to the jars, or it gives options to add the salt to your actual stewed tomatoes. I'm going to add salt to each jar. So as far as I can see, that would be the only variation. Some are asking, or the recipes in the older ones, celery salt. Some say celery seed. Some say fresh celery. So in this recipe, as I use an ingredient, I'm going to let you know what you can substitute that ingredient for. I'm using celery leaves from my garden. So if you were going to use fresh celery, it would be 1 stalk trimmed. In other words, I call them hairs, but you trim your celery, and because you don't want all that in your stuff. Or you can use dehydrated, or you can use freeze-dried, as long as you're sticking to the recipe. Like I said, as we do an ingredient, I will then give you the option to use this, or this in place of, because we still have to stay within the safety guidelines. So we're going to talk about that today too, because we're also pressure canning, not water bath canning. We're going to pressure can. But this may be a little bit extended video because I think it warrants an explanation to why this would not be safe to water bath can. Okay? So the first thing I got to do is put my peppers. Remember, you can use bell peppers, whatever. I'm using 4 jalapeños. I'm putting them in a 325-degree oven. I just want to get them soft. And then we'll sweat them because I want the skins off. No matter what pepper you are using, it's just like a tomato skin. You need to get that skin off. The skin is what houses the toxin bacteria. Whether you're organic growing or not, the skin is what can taint your recipe. So the best thing to do is get them charred, blistered, and then sweat them. And I'll show you how I'm going to sweat mine. To get that skin off. And then you're dealing with just a pure pepper. There again, bell pepper, red bell pepper, cayenne, serranos, hatch chilies. It's going to be your choice, okay? But the measurement has to stay the same. So let me get this in the oven. It's going to be a good, I'm thinking, probably 10 minutes. But I'm going to keep a check on them because as soon as I can see them kind of sweating and I can kind of do this and see it want to roll off, that's when I'm going to pull it out and sweat them down. And that takes about 5 minutes. So really and truly, you could do this the night before, put the peppers in the refrigerator, or you can do it the morning of. I'm doing it while I talk to y'all. Yeah, I'm flying by the seat of my pants today, y'all. But we gonna get this going. I got my coffee. Oh, what a day it's been. Mo's here. I don't even know what time it is. It's like 10, 9:30 or 10. Yeah. Whew. I can already tell it's gonna be a long day. That's in the oven. So, that's almost better than the one I had at 5 this morning. Or at 6. But, we gotta talk. Okay, I really need to sit down. I'm gonna stand up. It's good for my cardio, right? So, the reason why I said we are pressure canning, and if you see me lean to this, this is my electric pressure canner. I'll tell you how to do it on your stovetop pressure canner. It's basically the same, guys. If you're not familiar with pressure canning, read before you attempt this, okay? I'm just saying, you need to know your altitude. I'm actually below 1,000. So I'm going to work off 11 pounds of pressure. If you're above 1,000 altitude, you need to look and see what your rating is. I can't sit here and tell you guys what you're supposed to pressure can on if it's above 1,000. Now, last year I took the time and researched it. I'm going to say research it yourself. I'm below 1,000, so I know that I pressure can on 11 pounds. And you're saying, well, I thought it was 10. Yes and no, okay? The weights are always, if you're going standard weight, it'll be 5, 10, and 15. That was the old models. Now they come out with the jigglers that is 5, 10, and 15. But actually, in the last 3 years, they readjusted. So your 10 pound of pressure, if you're using a gauge, 10 to 11. So I always say 11 is a sweet spot, talking about stovetop pressure canning. I have the advantage to this Presto Precise electric pressure canner. I don't have to deal with that gauge, or I don't have to deal with that tattler no more. It does it for me. So, but the times and all that's going to be the same. So now that we got that out of the way, you're going to say, well, it's tomatoes, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're making stewed tomatoes. One would think, oh, well, it's in high acidic. Okay, we got to stop there. Some may think high acidic means the higher the number. No, the higher the number, the lower the acidic. Okay, in this old ball book, it's going to tell you 4.6 acidic. Above has to be pressure canned. 4.6 acidic and below can be water bath. You're thinking, well, it's just 4.6. So how would one know? Because you're saying 4.6 up, pressure can. 4.6 down, water bath. I think I said this when I first started making videos, but I got so many new friends out there, and thank y'all, by the way. 4.5 and below is your sweet spot and safe spot for water bath canning. 4.6 and above is your low acid. That's when you have to bring the pressure canner in, okay? So an average tomato, and they all vary, by the way, an average tomato is 4.6 and below. But your peppers, bell, jalapeno, peppers across the board, 4.8 to 6. Uh-oh, we've moved up. When we move up, we have to pressure can. Okay? You gotta think about that. This is very simple, but I know it can be an overload to a new beginner canner. So always remember to research what it is that you are mixing. So therefore, these peppers and these other ingredients that have a low acid, meaning 4.6 and up, carries the toxin bacteria, and you have to kill it with 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Not 240 no more. They have changed that. But 250 actually is the new guideline. Then that would require pressure canning. If it's 4.6 and below, which I told y'all 4.5 is my sweet spot, water bath canning. What temperature do we have to reach? 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So you see the difference? Water bath canning will never reach, I don't care how hard you boil it, it's never going to reach 250 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is what is required to remove any bacteria, botulism, because that's I think the standard word, but really it's toxic bacteria is what it is. That's what it's required. So therefore, in this recipe I'm using stewed tomatoes. And like I said, I'm going to vary this one, but I'm still within the safe zone and I'll explain it. Or in this one or any ball book for stewed tomatoes, it's going to give you options of the peppers. But it's also going, every one of them's going to tell you to pressure can, because we're having to go with the lower acid number, meaning the peppers are less acid than the tomatoes. So yeah, it's kind of like canning meat, but we're not doing that. We're talking about tomatoes and today's stewed tomatoes. So I don't want to confuse anyone, but when you're dealing with a lower acid mixed with a tomato, you have to look at the proper guidelines for that, okay? I'm going to give you one more. I've been watching various channels, okay? I'm not a rebel canner, but to each his own, right? But I have actually seen them substitute sugar, which we're putting sugar in here, okay? That's in every book. It balances the acidity, flavor profile. They will exchange it for carrots, whether that be little small chunks, mashed, whatever, as their natural sweetener. But what they are not realizing is when you do that, you can. But we're going to be processing for 15 minutes in a pressure canner. They will pressure can for 15 minutes. You have to go with the highest or longest rating time-wise of cooking. Carrots is 25 minutes for a pint. Now think about what I just said. This recipe is 15 minutes to process a pint, 20 minutes for quarts. If I was to exchange this sugar for carrots, I have got to go with the safety guidelines that carrots require. And that would be 25 minutes for a pint. So you see, some people are shortcutting that 10 minutes of processing, pressure canning. Well, they just took a risk right there. And that's what I'm trying to say. Don't be fearful of canning, because you're in control of your food. You know, you have to learn the ingredients. That's what it is. You have to learn the pH. And that's in most every book. Every state has a food guideline to go by. Your local branches have that. And just inquire. A lot of times it'll be a PDF you can print off online. And bam, put it on your ice box and there's your cheat sheet. Great recipes are out there. But if you know canning, I'm sure many of y'all have caught the oh no's. But if you're new to canning, don't trust anyone, not even Lippy. Okay? You get a ball book. I don't care what kind of ball book. I have 12 of them. I even have one Amish book. But that Amish book has been stamped and approved. Okay? It almost mimics some of the ball recipes. And that's great with me too. So, we're going to pressure can. And the reason why we're going to pressure can is because of the other ingredients. celery, bells, I'm using peppers. This also has onions in it. I will be omitting the onions. And you ask why? Because I don't want that in my stewed tomatoes. Because what I'm trying to get to, instead of doing rotel like I did last year, I can do a stewed tomato. Now I don't have any hatch chilies. I'm using my jalapeños. I'm bringing that rotel flavor profile in. Well, rotel doesn't have onions in it. It has some onion powder. But if I can stay within a stewed tomato rotel flavor profile, then that's a win-win for me. Because when I pull that jar out, I can add coriander, which you would add cilantro. I don't like cilantro. Well, coriander is cilantro. But I can add a little coriander. I can add cumin. And I have now got rotel. So to me, this is a dual purpose recipe. Now I'm going to do a standard batch. So stewed tomatoes is going to yield me stewed tomatoes. It's going to yield me rotel. So by me doing my variation, still within the safely guidelines of stewed tomatoes, I'm getting a dual purpose. Rotel, stewed tomatoes. So I can either go, like I said, with enchiladas, okay? Casseroles, chilies. But my stewed tomatoes then is for my vegetable soup. That's what we eat. We can eat it once a week. So that's really big for me. So I'm going to get 2 types of tomatoes. Only one I will bump up, like I said, with cumin, coriander. You could add your cilantro. This is when you're opening the jar. Bam, you've got rotel. You're talking 15 seconds. Dump a little seasoning, and you're off to the races. Mo's here, y'all. I just realized that. So, all right, let me set this back on the stove. As soon as those come out, I'm going to bring you back, show you how I sweat them. Then I'm going to get everything laid out, every ingredient, and then as I show you one, I'm going to give you the options, and we're going to rock this out. But like I said, it might have been a little bit longer video today, but I really needed to try and express to you guys that canning is simple. Knowing your acid levels. One, the higher the number, the less acidic. Okay? And it can be confusing. Certain vegetables that you add, you have to see what the processing time is. And really and truly, when you can get all of that and take notes, you know, on each recipe, give yourself a memo. You're fine. And I'm going to tell you what, you're going to be so pleased with yourself. You're going to be proud of yourself. It's just taking those little extra steps to educate and not just follow a video. I've said this, guys, since I started this. Don't even trust me. But I trust me. And you have to trust yourself. And if you're comfortable doing what you do and you sleep good at night, then it's a win-win for all of us. And that's kind of how I look at it. I'm not going to tell you how to prepare your food. I'm just going to show you how I prepare mine, and we can work off of one another and spark ideas. But the one thing I have to say is I encourage you, I plead with you. Get books. Don't be a follower. Be a leader of your kitchen. Be a leader of your canning. Do not be a follower. So, all right, I'm going to shut up. I'm done. Well, my coffee's getting cold too. Look at this beautiful blistering on these peppers. Now, they're hot, so whew, let me try to get it. I might have picked too small of a bowl, but I'm going to mash it down. I'm going to make it work. I'm just going to take some saran wrap, guys. And this is how I am going to sweat these. And I'm going to tell you, this little bitty step makes all the difference in the world. Perfect. Make sure it's tight because you really want them to sweat. Okay. Probably a good 10 minutes. I'll be able to tell because you're going to see the sweat and then they'll really get soft. Okay, so I'm gonna set this aside and I'm gonna get my station ready. Okay, I'm gonna give you the full recipe. 4 quarts of diced tomatoes, 1 stalk of celery, or 1/8 cup of freeze-dried or dehydrated celery, or 1 teaspoon celery salt. The original recipe says 1 stalk of celery. I'm using 1/8 of a cup of freeze-dried celery. 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1/4 cup diced peppers, bell peppers. I'm using jalapeno peppers, but that's 1/4 cup diced. The recipe calls for 1 onion. I'm removing that. It also says 1/4 teaspoon citric acid, or 1 tablespoon pure lemon juice to a pint, or 2 tablespoons lemon juice to a quart. I'm removing that. So I'm not going to use the onion, but as I put the ingredients in, I will run back through it with the recipe. I will not be using the lemon juice. I'm going to be using citric acid. Now, in a few of my comments, there's a lot of concern about citric acid. You know, it derives from the mold from fruit. You have to look that up, guys. It's too long in detail for me to explain it to you. But it's basically the mold of the fruit, okay? And some would say it's, you know, it can be harmful to the body. It works kind of like a black mold. I say to each his own. I don't have a problem with citric acid. That's just me. But do your research. I have known about this for quite a few years. I've not seen any changes. I've not seen how they have actually changed the ingredients. Well, I use the ball. Now, there is other brands. I only use the ball brand. This one doesn't expire till 25. I've had it 2 years. I pay attention to the expiration. If you do not feel comfortable, pure lemon juice, not a fresh squeezed lemon, pure lemon juice. And, you know, you're off to the races. You're good. But there is information down in my comments from others, and I greatly appreciate it. But I think that needs to be an individual choice, okay? What works for me may not work for you. What works for you may not work for me. So just keep that in mind, because, you know, there's nothing that's got 100% to it. You just got to use what you're comfortable with. And I'm extremely comfortable with citric acid when I deal with tomatoes. And remember, this week is all about tomatoes. So I'm going to move you. I've got my jars heating up. Remember, hot jars for hot products. So I got my jars heating up. I'll move you to the stove. I'm going to give you the recipe again according to the Ball book. And we'll talk about what I left out. Simple, simple. I'm going to put my heat on about a number 8. 4 quarts of tomatoes. That's equivalent to 24 large tomatoes. That kind of gives you a little rough idea. But there's 4 quarts of diced tomatoes in here. And as you can see, I do have quite a bit of liquid. Okay? But I'm just going to go ahead and leave it. All right, the recipe says 1 stalk of celery, de-stringed and chopped. I'm using 1/8 of a cup of my freeze-dried celery leaves. You can also use a teaspoon of celery seed and a teaspoon of celery salt. Original recipe says 1 stalk of celery. The third ingredient, it would call for 1/2 cup of diced onion. I'm omitting that. But if you're writing this down, It's 1/2 cup of diced onion. In my opinion, it's going to take away from the flavor profile that I'm trying to get. Remember, you can always take away, but you never add to a recipe if it doesn't warrant your process time, which is standard amounts that the recipe would require. And I was wrong. It's 1 tablespoon of sugar, not 2 tablespoons. 1/4 cup diced peppers. Remember, I'm using jalapeños, any diced pepper, bell pepper, whatever. 1/4 cup. Okay, we're going to give this a mix. We're going to bring this up to temp. Recipe says to simmer for recipe says to simmer for 10 minutes. I'm going to have to let mine go a little bit longer without breaking up my tomatoes. Remember, this is diced tomatoes because of the amount of liquid. And I'm fine with that. That gives me time to get all my jars ready. So, 10 minutes, once it comes to a simmer, if you didn't have so much liquid, I'm going to go probably 20 minutes because I do have so much liquid. Oh, and remember, it calls for 2 teaspoons of salt, non-iodized. I won't be adding that to this because I'm going to add it to my individual jars. But if you wanted to add it now, that would be 2 teaspoons of non-iodized salt. Y'all, stop the presses. I forgot. Y'all remember when I lost everything in my freeze dryer? Yeah, that's bad. Well, I'm not going to say who our friend is, but I was gifted from the company Lighthouse, and y'all know I love that company. Freeze-dried jalapeños. Freeze-dried bell peppers. Now, I got so many it didn't feel this. I mean, I got extra, so I've got a full quart and a half. And I'm like, I was cleaning up, and I was like, I've got freeze-dried jalapeños. Okay. And it could not have happened at a better time. If y'all remember last year, I only touched on it, okay? I omitted that 1/2 cup of onions. Because remember what I said is you can never add, but you can take away. We had 1/4 cup of bell. That's what's in the pot. It said you could use 1/2 cup of onions. So 1/2 cup of onions and 1/4 cup of diced bell, jalapeno. That is equivalent to 3/4 cup. What does that tell you? I only used 1/4. I still have 1/2 cup I can use to stay within the safety guidelines. Like I said, you can always go down, mix up, all bell, all onion. I've said this probably 2 years of canning, 3 years, however long I've been on. And it was like, you dummy. I got jalapenos and I got bells. And I have what? I have 1/2 cup of diced onions that I left out because you can. But I'm going to add back 1/2 cup. You following me? So I'm going to put the original recipe in the description directly from the ball book. But I'm also going to give, beside the onion, exchange for, meaning that 1/2 cup has to still be 1/2 cup. But we're fixing to exchange it for bell and jalapeno. And I'm probably going to do, since it's 1/2 cup, I could do 1/4 of each. And I'm going to do that. I'm getting my 1/2 cup measure. And I'm fixing to go half bell, half, oh my God, jalapenos. Now, you don't have to use jalapenos. I know some of y'all don't like heat. But I was like, look, I totally forgot. Y'all, I just got these last week. I sure wish my freeze dryer wouldn't have went. But it did. But I thank you, darling. So, we're going to bring back the 1/2 cup onion. Only exchange for jalapenos and bell peppers. Whew, that was a mouthful. And you're thinking, I am lost as a goose. You won't be, because I'm leaving the recipe in the description. Just like the ball book says. Not what Lippy says. We are there. Ooh, you see the steam? Guys, I am so glad I remembered the freeze-dried jalapenos and bell peppers. And like I said, remember, the original recipe said a half a cup onions. I omitted that. But I brought it back in, splitting freeze-dried jalapenos and freeze-dried bell pepper to that half a cup measurement. Oh boy, let's see. Me and this camera. Y'all can see, and you can see the stewed tomatoes. Okay. If you were doing lemon juice, it'd be 1 tablespoon. I'm doing citric acid. That is 1/4 teaspoon. Any salt, as long as it's not iodized, I'm doing canning salt, 1/2 teaspoon. And I'm probably only going to get 4 or 5. That's what I'm estimating. Oh, this is gorgeous. Now, if you didn't want all this juice, there you go. And I'm going with a 1/2 inch of headspace. About right there. Perfect. Now, you're saying, oh, you're going to debubble? Well, there's chunks in here. Let me move this. There we go. And I'm just going to do that because a lot of times the air can actually be in those large hunks of, and see, I just saw a bubble. It doesn't take much, but just a little. Here is my soaking wet vinegar rag. I'll give my jar rim a good cleaning. We're gonna get a flat out. That's just in hot tap water. Ring on, finger tight into the canner. Okay, while it's coming up to pressure, just like a standard stovetop, it's coming up and then it's gonna vent. On mine, it will ding and give a timer, and it'll be a countdown. Because once it comes to a full steam, just like on a pressure canner on a stovetop, that's when you have to start your 10 minutes of timing. Once it's a steady stream that you cannot shut down, that's when you're gonna have to time for 10 minutes. I'm using the Presto. It's gonna do it for me. The only thing I have to do when it comes to pressure canning with this is it's going to give me an indication beep, 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 beep. And on the screen, it's going to tell me to add my jiggler. Okay? So, I can clean up, have all this done, and then I can go sit down when it starts pressure canning. But I ended up with 5 pints and a 1/2 pint. So 5 1/2 pints total for this batch. That's what was left over. I mean, teaspoon and a half, but I wanted to try it. Now this doesn't have the citric acid, doesn't have the salt. You know, that's what I put in the jars. But this is just the flavor from the pot. And I want to try this. It smells amazing. I'm excited. Here we go. Guys. Tasting the bell. I'm tasting that hint of celery, but it's not overpowering and it's not the chunks. I'm tasting the jalapeno. Now mine, you saw I de-seeded. Yeah, I de-seeded all of mine. So, the freeze-dried jalapenos got a little bit of punch. Oh, this is going to be perfect. This is going to give me my stewed tomatoes. If I want rotel, which this next batch, to be honest, I think I'm going to do all in 1/2 pints. The reason being is that's about a standard size can of rotel. So when I pull that out, I won't be doing the stewed tomatoes. I will be doing rotel. I will add then coriander, which is much milder than fresh cilantro. You know, y'all do what you want to do on that. And some cumin. And I'm there with the rotel. I am there. I knocked this one out the park. I mean, there's not much left. Hands down, I am so glad that my eye saw the freeze-dried jalapenos and bells. Because y'all remember mine burned up, and my mind was, I mean, I just got them last week, and I was like, so what I did is I moved them to the very front instead of, because they were kind of at an angle, and my eye just caught them. Guys, yeah. So I'm going to clean all this up. I'm actually going to take a quick coffee break after I get this cleaned up. Watch this. It's venting right now, but it's not come to a full steam. And yeah, 2 usage out of 1 recipe. I'm going to do this from now on, and I'm so glad that I thought about it because, you know, it's also less jars on the shelf too. I mean, you'll have more of one stewed tomato, but it's going to be so universal. But I really think that I'm going to do the next batch and half pints, maybe 2 more batches. You know, so yeah, size of a roadtail. If I needed more, I just opened 2 cans for stewed. I'm good to go. All right, we'll be back when this thing finishes. Look at it bubble. 5.5 pints. Because there's a little half pint tucked in there. And look how gorgeous. Well, there you have it. I am so pleased. They are absolutely gorgeous. And the smell in the house, oh my goodness. But this was a single batch according to the ball recipe. The next batch I will double because that way I can get a lot done, you know. And if it kind of cools down, that's fine. I'll just bring it back up to temp and continuously add to my pressure canner as batches, you know, complete. Because I'm actually looking at, I'd like to get 25 to 30 pints of the stewed tomatoes. I tasted that. You saw that. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And I could see, like I said, I could add, or y'all could add cilantro. I would go light-handed with coriander just to give a hint of that flavor. Some cumin. Bam, I've got rotel, you know. So this, to me, after tasting it, this is going to be my go-to. So I look forward to tomorrow. I don't know yet what I'm going to do tomorrow. We still have 2 more days of canning tomatoes. But today was a longer video because I really needed to share at the front end of this video just some important information that some of you new canners need to take note of. So as always, stay safe, stay well, and God bless. And I will see you in the morning. Or y'all probably see me tomorrow evening. Bye, y'all.